Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited for our guests today. Before I introduce them, here's a quote just for this episode. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Epictetus. Our guest today is a good friend of the Culture Matters podcast. This may be your first time experiencing them, but they have been a staple in the life of one of our dear and beloved guests, friends that you've definitely listened to before, or else I don't want you on the show to be listening to anymore. And that's the real Brian Hess. Today, this is one of his most important relationships. It's the chief growth officer of the Pavement Group. This is someone I consider a friend of myself, a mentor, an integrator, not more than just sales, like transformer, more than meets the eye. I'm going to make this introduction as awkward as possible in the spirit of his humor and talents. God, I've never met a better MC, master of ceremonies, the one and only Scott.
I love it. I love it.
Scott Gorell.
Oh man,
Todd Gorell, founder. Hold on, Talking Lots. Let's pitch the podcast. Talking Lots.
Sure.
And thanks for coming, gracing us with your presence.
My pleasure, Jay. This is awesome. I can't live up to that kind of an introduction. I don't know if you do those every time. I've heard of, I don't know, I've probably heard 30 of your podcasts, and I know you always have a very well, you got a great quote, but always a good introduction for people as well. And it can be tough to live up to. But since you butchered my name, I feel like the pressure's off. Right?
Yeah, I'd like to know. There's so many things I'd like to know, from selfishly, right? What makes a good joke?
Sure.
Can we start there?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's an opinion, but a great joke. I see comedy mostly through the lens of a stand-up comedian, because that's who I don't want to say studied. I mean, I haven't studied it professionally or whatever, but I've watched so many comedians. My favorite thing in the world is stand-up comedy. And you and I connect on a very humorous and comedic level. So, I think any great stand-up would tell you, like, the economy of words in a joke, as short as possible, getting to the punchline as quick as you can. Now, there's a lot of comics out there that are, they're storytellers, like your Bob Newharts or Gary Goldman or someone like that, they're not just going to give you a punch them up, punch them up, punch them up. It's a narrative, but you'll notice they don't waste words, even guys like that. And so I think that's the first kind of, I don't know, pillar of a great joke is don't make it too verbose. So many people kind of sell past the close, if you will, with a joke, and they just keep going. And that's tough.
Are there commonalities between business sales and comedy?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Well, I mean, the performative part of it, right? When you think of being in sales, where you have to present, you have to pitch to some degree, you got to earn trust. So again, as from the eyes of a stand-up comedian, like, you've got a couple of seconds to get that audience, to get them engaged, to get them to like you, or to at least to trust you, to follow you. And there's a ton of parallels right there with when you're starting a relationship in sales. But the obvious ones, when you're doing a presentation, when you've got a few people you're presenting to, or you're running a meeting with clients, you've got to engage them quickly. I mean, you've been in millions of meetings. If you don't get that hook set right away, and not just to sell them necessarily, just so it's not a boring meeting, or it's not, people don't disengage and lose, everything that you're talking about.
Now, if I understand correctly, you had two choices. One was medical school or sales.
Yes, you are understanding correctly. And I'm still waitlisted at Columbia, waiting for the call. It's been, I don't know, 32 years now, but no, I didn't even apply to college. I was such a horrible student. Don't let the sport coat and t-shirt look fool you. I'm switching it up a little bit these days, by the way. I know this is an audio medium right now. But when folks do finally see the video, they'll see how spiffy I am. But yeah, I was a terrible student. I went to high school for 5 years, And I had, vicious ADD, which I still do now, but I've kind of learned to make it work for me in a large degree. And I like school. It was fun. I missed like 170 days my senior year, so they asked me to come back for another one. Medical school, forget about it. Any college, really, it didn't appeal to me, you know.
Did you know we shared that the 10-year high school?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we've talked about that
What
before.
what what is it? You know, why didn't we fit in that box, you think?
I don't because well, what I think is I like the people I went to high school with. I enjoyed a lot of the experience, quite frankly, the social part of it, but sitting in a chair and trying to, I don't know, take notes and study for tests and all that stuff, I couldn't do it. It's just like, I'd be coming out of my skin sitting in class. So all the way back to, I don't know, probably second grade, I would find an excuse to go to the bathroom, and go and walk around. And that continued just, once you get into high school, you get a little more freedom and you got your friends. So I just blew off every class and went to Dunkin' Donuts or, hung out in the hallway or whatever. But I didn't hate the whole part of it. Like high school wasn't torture. Just once I was in the classroom, it was terrible.
Mm.
And I feel like you're probably the same way. Like you probably got a lot of things out of it socially or from a personal growth standpoint, but maybe not a lot of great grades.
Very, very dark phase. Question: Have you
Yeah.
noticed that? Have you noticed that salespeople, people that high performing ones that actually deliver, there's some kind of connection with not fitting in that structured box, or do you say it's a mixed bag?
No, I think it's a mixed bag because there's a lot of good salespeople that I've seen who were like college athletes, right? That's one of the kind of prototypes because you're competitive, you're team oriented, you're goal oriented. So usually to become a college athlete, you had to be pretty much on that path, right? You have a pretty good student, good enough grades to play sports in high school, coachable and all that sort of stuff. So no, I mean, I believe me, I've seen, I'm doing sales for, I don't know, 20 years or whatever. And I've seen all types, but I think when you're building your prototype, that's one of the things that I would really start with is not necessarily that they had to have good grades, but they were disciplined at an early age in something. And sports gives that competitiveness, that team, that coachability. So
What was your first sales job? Was it before T and K?
yeah, well, I sold. So it was before T&K. I sold, and I'm trying to remember the timing on this. Actually, our friend, well, he's going to become your friend. You're meeting him soon, Rick Bell, who's been on the Talking
Yeah.
Lots podcast and has been a tremendous help to us just as an advisor in the short term. He got me a job at a place called Liturgical Publications, and we were selling ads for the back of the church bulletin. And basically, it was Catholic churches all throughout New England. They put you up in a hotel in the town, and you had 1 week to go in and see the beauty shop, the auto body guy, and mostly it was phone calls. On occasion, you have to go and stop in and try to close the deal and selling like $200, $500 ads. So that was my very first entree into sales. Most of the time, it was really, I didn't learn a lot there about sales because I remember there was this guy, Dick Clue was his name, was the sales manager. Rick's laughing if he's listening right now. And the only piece of advice he ever gave us in sales meetings was just throw enough shit against the wall and some of it will stick. And he would say that every Friday or whenever our sales meetings were. And so that was about all I learned. And then you get to the parish, you get to the church on, say it was Monday morning, and the priest or the pastor would just give you the list and say, all these people already committed for this year. I got 5 that you got to really nail down, and here's how you can do it. Like they were telling you, because they wanted that revenue, obviously for the church. And most of these people were parishioners, so they were an easy sell. They like seeing their name or their business card or whatever in the back. So that was my first sales job. Didn't learn a ton there.
What came naturally to you, if anything at all?
I think the ability to talk to people. So, and yeah, I know that's kind of hacky or whatever, but I do think that's something you need to be able to overcome or become very comfortable with silence, which you learn either earlier or later in your career. But if you're able to talk with people and be conversational, once you learn how to listen and also still be, conversational or engage and really give a shit about what people are saying and really, hearing them at that level. So when you get to that next level in your career, but I think that was one thing that kind of came naturally is I didn't mind, engaging with people. I didn't mind picking up the phone, making those calls, asking for the business.
At that time, were you still pursuing comedy?
Man, I gotta tell you, it was fuzzy back then. Probably there was about a 4-year window there, but I never went hard at the comedy. Um, God bless you. I never went hard at the comedy. So there was probably about a 4-year window where I was kind of in and out, like doing
They're
open
gonna
mic.
think you have Tourette's because I held my breath.
I know. Ah,
I'm
God bless
sorry,
you.
this is gonna be fun.
Oh man. Yeah,
I
you
know
set me
you're
up with that one.
biased.
This is an old podcast trick for those listening at home. Jay just sneezed. Um, no, man, it's it's funny to think though, like, so like that, a lot of that part of my life blended together because I didn't have a path. Like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just loved stand-up comedy. Boston, I was living in Boston and it's like a hotbed. So many great comics were coming through there at the time. So I love hanging out at the club, and I go to open mics and a couple of clubs where I get on like a showcase or whatever. Never did anything really major. I've done very few paying gigs in my whole life. Um, but it was something that kept me happy and energized, at least, but it wasn't necessarily, I didn't, what if I knew now, or knew then what I know now, like about that path and how to make it, I know I could have become a comic, like a professional comic. To what level? I'm not saying I would have been Jay Leno, but there's a lot of paths there. You can do like corporate work, you can do cruise ships. I don't know if I would have liked that life though, because once I met my wife, I was like, well, I want to get serious about life now. And you not that you can't get serious about life, but that's a hard life. If you're making your living doing stand-up comedy, let's say you're good enough to start playing, regional clubs, you're gone Thursday through Sunday night. It's
Wow.
52 weeks a year, and then it's a road life. So it's a hard way to have a family and all that too. So
The first stage that you were on,
yep.
do you remember?
Oh, I do. I do. There's a place called the Colonial Inn in Concord, Massachusetts. So you familiar with Concord?
No?
The Battle of Lexington and Concord, Revolutionary War. It said that Thomas Jefferson slept at this hotel. It's like,
Wow.
300 something years old or whatever. So they they used to have a open mic night there, and it was mostly for people that were doing like poetry and folk music. Like it was a very crunchy crowd, and I was too afraid to go into a real club and try out my act. So I went on there, and I'm not kidding you. I went between this couple that plays the banjo. Their name was Two for the Show. Really sweet couple, but they were like these folksy kind of just like all American, nicest people. Nobody in that restaurant was swearing at all. Uh, and then I go up and I'm telling awful jokes about probably like the Brady Bunch or whatever. I don't really remember my first set, but it was so hacky and so terrible. But I'm like dropping F-bombs from the stage because I'm so uncomfortable. It's bailing. I got 4 or 5 of my friends way in the back of the room. They're laughing because it's such a disaster. So I do like, I don't know, 4 minutes. Then I get up. And then some dude that was about 97 years old got up and did a spoken word about a tree in his front yard. So that's what I middled between banjo and the tree poetry guy. And absolutely ate it on my very first time doing stand-up. But I'll always remember it. It's one of my favorite places in the world to begin with. It's a really cool, like old restaurant and inn and stuff. So we stopped there probably once every couple of years.
Were you hooked or were you persistent then?
No, I was hooked after I was like, okay, well, I guess I can deal with the humiliation of this. So that's when I started going into Boston. And like, as I say, like mostly it was open mic nights. This guy named Dick Doherty had a bunch of clubs around Boston, and you could go. Usually they have like these bringer shows, they call them. So you got to pay $5, bring at least 3 people, and then you can get on the list and do your stand up that night. There's a place called the Comedy Studio. So I met this guy, Rick Jenkins, who owned the Comedy Studio. And he would put me on maybe once a month, and he'd get like 7 minutes, but there were some real killers that came through there. And it was in Harvard Square. So he had a very smart audience. It was most of the time it was students or people that lived in the area, professors and stuff. And that was a really cool club. You know, a lot of big names would come through, like Louis CK. Like I'd be on a Wednesday night, you know, waiting for my turn to go up, and Rick would come over and be like, "Hey, I got to bump you. Louis CK's here." I'd be like, "That's cool. He can open for me. You know, let's see if he can handle it."
Wow.
No, but yeah. So that was a really neat experience. But that was sort of about the level that I got to. Um, again, mostly because, well, I didn't really have a plan with it. I didn't know if it was something I wanted to like conquer. It was definitely something I wanted to try. And then it became almost like a hobby, and I really enjoyed it. But then I met my wife, and really that was our favorite thing to do, was to go to the comedy studio. We lived 20 minutes from there. So on nights when I wasn't performing, which was most nights, like you know, Friday night or something, that'd be a fun date night for us. We'd go and hang out there and that sort of thing. So being around it, like the culture of stand-up comedy, it was cool. It was cool.
Are there things that you would attribute today that that you live out or act out or let's say have monetized in your current career that you learned then?
Yeah, well, I think the stage piece of it, um, you know, the stage presence, and I don't even know how much of it necessarily I've monetized. Um, but that's a skill that I've taken with me. Like I'll host fundraisers. We were doing a comedy show down here for about 5 years annually to raise money for the PTO. It was a great excuse to get all our friends together. And I would, you know, always call like a comic I knew from Boston or from New York, to come up and headline, and we'd have a killer show. Like these aren't shows you get in the suburbs generally. We would get really great. Like Joe List, if you know who Joe List is, he did our show twice, and he's huge now. John Fitt, just a lot of great comics that came through. And so that was kind of like, you know, my wife and I planned all these events, and but
Wow.
I'd always open. So I wanted to know, hey, can I still hold up with, you know, be on a stage at least with these guys? And I do 5, 7 minutes. It's super easy when you're in a room full of 100 people that you know. And then you know, you can roast half of them and that sort of thing. So I was never really necessarily worried about not being able to do it, but that was really neat. So yeah, that's something. And then I MC fundraisers, do auctioneering to some degree, you know, a lot of stuff in Falmouth where I volunteer my time. And Falmouth's my hometown, where I volunteer my time and stuff. So those are all things I probably wouldn't have just done naturally, that I learned how to do through comedy.
Why did you accept the position at T and K?
I needed something, man. So I had been uh bartending for I was managing bars in Boston for, I don't know, a chunk of time, 3 years, something like that, when I met my wife. And just realized, like, she was a little more career oriented than I was. I mean, how could you not be? But let me stop and tell you that story, because this is very germane to kind of how the rest of my life has gone. Um, we she was a we had a mutual friend, and they were living in Watertown, suburb of Boston. I wanted to move to Boston. I was living out in the burbs at the time, and I went to their Christmas party. Um, Actually, that's not even true. That's not the best part of the story. My wife and I were set up on a blind date by the same person about 2 months before. I forgot about this part. So we
Ah,
were set up on a blind date like 2 months before, because the girl that I went to high school with, my wife summered with her. They were living together in this place in Watertown. The girl that we, you know, our mutual friend wanted to date a friend of mine. She was interested in him. She's like, "Hey, let's do a double date. I'll bring Christine. You guys will hit it off." Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was kind of seeing someone at the time. We had a fun night. Never really went anywhere. So it's kind of like a blind date, but it really wasn't. Well, cut to, I go to the Christmas party a few months later, and they're like, "Oh, our roommates, you know, hasn't paid rent in 3 months, and we got to toss her out. We don't know what we're gonna do." And I'm like, "I'm looking for a place in Boston. This is perfect." So I moved in like February, something like that. And then she and I had our first date. You know, when you're young, you're in the city, you're partying, you're out drinking, you end up kissing, then you live together. Like, wow, this is
ah,
awkward, you know. So we
wow.
had, literally by July, we
Ah,
were kind of dating and living together. So it was so sped up, so extreme of a timeline for something like that. And then September, our lease came up. The girl that we were living with, or woman that we were living with, was getting engaged, so she was going to move out. The place was too big for us. So we're like, are we going to go get another place and keep living together? So literally from July, first date, September, committed on a lease together, married a year later, had my son a year after that, because everything was just kind of sped up. So in the course of all that, I realized like, hey, I love her. This is wonderful. I want to build a life for us, and I'm very traditional in that respect. I wasn't going to be like, hey, you go earn the money. I'm going to keep hacking away at this comedy thing. I'm like, no, I'm going to, and I was making decent money in the restaurant world. But once we had our first son as well, I started to, getting home at 3 a.m. and just started to realize it wasn't really the lifestyle I wanted managing bars. So, this is kind of funny. So this couple came into the bar, and they used to come in like every Tuesday and Thursday, something like that, at noontime, and they'd start drinking, and we'd have great conversation. And by 3 o'clock, they were plastered, and their business was across the street. They owned a cleaning company. Really nice people. And they were every day, you should come do sales for us. You could talk to anybody, that whole thing. And I'm like, yeah, of course I should leave a steady career. I've got a new kid and my wife, and come do sales for the people that day drink at my bar all day. So I left and I went to work for him. So that was kind of the sales job that it didn't really even turn into too much. From there, I had a sales job on my resume enough to apply for this job with a startup tech company. And that was a great experience. Actually, I only worked there for like a year and a half, but I didn't know the product well. This dude was like kind of on a sort of a vengeance trip. He had been severanced by a large company. It was this point to point wireless internet, like backup internet for commercial companies. He had something that happened with the company he worked with before that didn't end well. He was like a vice president of sales there. So he was out, super competitive dude. He was out to, kind of ding him at least. So he started this startup company. I worked there for like a year and a half. He spun it off a few years later. It wasn't a great fit for me, but I learned a lot about sales from him, I guess is what I'm getting at. He was a hard charging dude, really good sales guy. And so now I got 2 sales jobs on my resume. This thing was like an hour away. I wasn't loving it. The money wasn't really good. And then I saw an ad in the paper for T&K. That was 2004, I think. Something like that. Yeah, 2004. So I saw the ad in the paper for T&K.
What months?
What month did I see the ad?
Yeah.
Sure. It was probably maybe March, because it was at the beginning of the season, beginning of the paving season. So it's probably February or March, something like that.
So 19 years-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess probably 19 years in the asphalt arena.
And so why'd you pick that job?
Well, I went to the interview basically because I live on Cape Cod, and they were hiring for a sales rep. They had just opened an office on Cape Cod, like literally, or like we're just setting it up. So it was fresh. They needed salespeople. I didn't know anything about construction or asphalt, but I went on the interview up to the headquarters, and I met the founder, guy named Kevin Gosnell, and then Gary Zemotel, who was, I don't know, he was director of sales. He became VP of sales. He and I were kind of co-VPs for years. But I met those two, and it was just so different from anything I've ever experienced. I'm sure we'll talk about this, but Kevin passed away in 2016. I did his eulogy. As part of his eulogy, I told the story about the interview where, so here he's this kind of big Irish guy, loud, passionate. You can tell he's so smart, but he talks, he's a Boston guy. He talks like that. And he looks at me at the end of our interview, and he goes, listen, I don't know if you can do this job or not, but you're the best I've seen so far today. And I'm like saying to myself, like, is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. And then he said to me, he goes, listen, do you want to come in here and try? And I said, yeah, I do. This seems like an amazing play. I think it is what people say about the Pavement Group a lot too, where you come in, you meet a few people, you're like, well, this is different than anything. And so I had obviously I had work experience in the sales and kind of being in a business arena. This was so different, and you could feel it right away, and you could tell he was somebody, and so he said to me, listen, I will get you there if you'll put the work in. If you are who I think you are, after talking with you for an hour and a half here, and you'll put the work in, meet me halfway, I'll get you there. I'll teach you how to sell. I'll teach you business. I'll teach you all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you got a deal. And then he's like, all right, we'll call you and let you know. So about 10 days of, they got a call, I called and checked in, didn't get him, blah, blah, blah. And then finally Gary called me and offered me the job. And it was, it's still a phone call that I remember to this day, back in 2004. Because it very much changed, it changed the trajectory of my life, my career, but probably, hopefully generationally for my family. If I don't screw this thing up, really set me on a path and therefore my family and hopefully generations.
Uh, when did he start the company?
He started the company. Oh, that's a good question. 97. So it was, yeah, 96, 97, somewhere around there. Company's probably 35, 36 years old now, something like that.
So, um, and what would you say are some of the ingredients that made it so special? If in retrospect.
Well, from a sales standpoint, and I can see this more looking back. It was the only real, it's all I knew at the time. So I didn't know it was so special until we were a few years into it. But we trained constantly, always innovating. Kevin was a constant learner. So, we did like a Sandler system type of stuff. And then we built out our own brand of that called, not our own brand of Sandler, but like, some of the Sandler tenants, some of the Zig Ziglar, all that sort of stuff meshed together for what really worked well. In our industry, we call it the gridiron sales program. And, so just that, like all the sales guys had an opportunity to be part of building that. It wasn't like just shoved down your throat. It was all very collaborative because the company was, so when I got there, we were doing, I don't know, maybe they had done 5 million the year before. So by 2007, we were up over $30 million in revenue. So it was like a rocket ship. We hired a bunch of people. So we had an opportunity to it was almost like an incubator space for sales to some degree, because Kevin was a sales guy at heart. That was his real passion. So to me, it was an amazing place to learn. I was always going to be challenged. It was never going to be stale. It was never going to be boring. We never wanted to say, hey, let's get to 20 million and just bump along, right? And we're all good. And we run our accounts. It was constantly growth, pushing you to the next level. It was a very competitive environment, so it was that's what made it different to me. Like I worked at Verizon as well for maybe 2 years. My dad was 35 years with a phone company. So he got me a job with Verizon when I was in my teens, and,
Wow.
worked in an office, and it was the worst culture you can imagine. It was just terrible. It wasn't even Verizon. I think it was Bell Atlantic or something at the time, but just stale people that had been in the same jobs for 20 years that hated it. They were just waiting to either cash out or die, and like, so this is what I'd kind of seen in a couple of dysfunctional companies. And I'm coming here, it's like, just go, you just get caught up in it. And then you realize as the years are ticking off, you're like, I'm getting pretty good at this. I'm learning this myself. I'm able to start to grow my own sales team and teach and coach. And that's amazing, when you can really feel like you're helping somebody make more money and change their family's lives.
When did you realize that you were you were into coaching?
I realized, well, I guess I knew I could coach on our program pretty well a few years into it. I didn't, really look at myself as someone that could coach outside of all of that until probably till I left T&K, really. We had bought a couple companies, or I shouldn't say, we had bought one, like had an interest in one company, and then we're, very deep into another one. There was some things that were going to transact or whatever. So I'd gone on the road to teach sales to some of the other companies as well. And so, that was a little kind of the next sort of step, but not until I get out of there, you get a chance to kind of look back and you go, well, we did a lot. I learned a lot. Saw a lot of the wrong ways to do things, a lot of the right ways to do things that, sorry, maybe I could coach to some degree. But,
How did you guys get through the Great Recession?
well, that's an interesting story, actually. We got lucky is what happened. We were going gangbusters building, like on Cape Cod and South Shore of Boston. There was a real housing boom and a lot of developments that were going in. So we were, going in behind site contractors, working for general contractors. So 05, 06, going into 07, that was still all very strong. There it was very strong, those guys had been doing it before I got there. So let's say 2003 to 2006, it was a boom. Houses getting built everywhere. That was a good world. But even then, when money was plentiful and companies, contractors were doing okay, you still get strung out for your money. So we were growing. Cash flow was so important. And you're waiting 90, 120 days, because sometimes, the town didn't inspect the road, or you didn't put the top down and the contractor didn't want to pay you for half, blah, 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 blah. So we just got exhausted by that. And we said, you know what, we're going to push harder into commercial, get into commercial real estate, move up more towards the city, the suburbs of Boston, out where there's a lot of healthcare and HOAs and all that sort of stuff. And we made that decision at the end of 2006, but simply because we were sick of dealing with these contractors that just strung you out forever on these
Wow.
jobs. And we went so hard, and we had to get in, Jay, with maintenance mostly, crack filling, seal coating, line striping, little patching, just to build your name up in that marketplace, really. And not to say we didn't exist there to some degree commercially, but at this point, we're still, maybe getting 10, $12 million, something like that. The explosion happened literally during the downturn because we activated our sales force, and we went so hard, and we took everything, and we didn't take it cheap either, but we were willing to go in and do, you need one arrow striped in your parking lot. We're your guy. We're going to do it. Great. And then you hammer them with customer service, right? Just showing them the process. Cause this is sort of, I don't want to say pre-digital, but it was emails and stuff, but it wasn't like a lot of the other tools that we have in place now. You didn't have like Basecamp or nobody was utilizing that anyhow. It might have existed, but you were emailing, calling the same day to make sure the job went okay, meeting them out there to walk through and punch everything out, like just killed with customer service. And we grew our commercial base so quickly during that time that it didn't matter that we were doing smaller jobs. So I say that because a lot of the capital work dried up. A lot of the large asphalt producers were coming into our space and taking the Dunkin' Donuts parking lots where they never cared about that stuff before. So we had to kind of go down a peg without even knowing it. We were just going up really at the time, but we just turned on the sales machine, as I said, and we got so many opportunities that we literally grew. And then the capital money started coming back online, and it worked out okay for us during that time. Not to say there weren't times where it was scary. Don't get me wrong. But
What
we
were the
got very
largest,
lucky.
what were the largest lessons from the growing pains?
To understand what you're spending, really understand your cost, understand the cost of sale. Um, we were so focused on the top line. That was a real mistake. That's something that painful, I mean, it wasn't my money. I didn't become a partner in the company until later on. But I watched, Kevin and I were very close, and, I watched some of the anguish of thinking you're here and finding out you're here. Right. And those are, I think, growing pains of not understanding, what things are really costing you, your cash flows. We had a really bad, I don't know what I'd call him, a controller, I guess. He wasn't a CFO. That was, well, I won't get into it, but he was doing some shit he shouldn't have been doing. And it took a little while to catch that. And that almost sunk the company as well. So controls and understanding cost and not being too focused on the top line. We're salespeople. So the top line means something. It's a scoreboard. It definitely is. But it doesn't mean anything. If you make 50 million, if you sell $50 million and you spend 51 million doing it, who gives a shit, right?
Mm. And we will see you all in the next episode of the Culture Matters.
That was it.
So Kevin is diagnosed. What happened? What did that do?
Um, well, I mean, to the company, it was because we were on this sort of trajectory where there was a lot happening at this point. Kevin we were part of a national group of owners, and they get together a couple times a year. So he was pretty well networked throughout the country.
Wow.
And a few people would come to him and say, "Hey, let's start this kind of roll up idea and stuff." And again, I'm not gonna, it never got there. So I don't want to get too far into the details in this very well listened to program, but that part of it just kind of stopped immediately because it had to. So it sort of felt like the forward momentum of the company in general, because the Boston T&K was going to kind of become, just a regional, not just, but like a regional office, and bigger things were going to happen up here and restructuring all that stuff. So it had been a year of talking about a lot of that stuff. And the company was doing okay, bumping along. We were hitting sales numbers and stuff. But when Kevin made his announcement to the company, I mean, it was absolutely devastating because you had a lot of people there. I mean, the guys and women that work in the field in this industry, are like, just they're incredible. I mean, they're so hardworking. They're warriors, but they are also, at least up by us, you know, what I saw at TNK, are like fiercely loyal. We had so many people that were there for 10, 15 years, 20 years, you know. So it truly was, you know, they were like his family. You know, Kevin was very, very good to people, cared a lot about him. He was very engaged, you know, he was that kind of a
Wow.
leader. So that part of it really hurt, you know. So that's the emotional part that was devastating, and took months, I think, for everybody to kind of pull up the bootstraps and say, all right, you know, the next part of this mission is we got to do it for Kevin's family, because, you know, we just received a diagnosis. We know he's not going to be here all that much longer. Um, and that was kind of, you know, the rallying cry from there. So, but it created some chaos. It definitely did. You know, we made a decision that essentially four of us bought the majority of the company, and that wasn't very good. You know, it wasn't a great arrangement. So two of us are no longer there, the CFO and myself. I was the VP of sales. But you know, so like it turned everything upside down, you know. But you know, it's that's the story.
What's ALS?
ALS, well, it's Lou Gehrig's disease. So it's, I can never say it right. It's like let me look it up over here. Lateral syndrome. I'm gonna look it up and I'll say it in a few
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
You would think I stumble over it all the time, but basically it's a disease that attacks more or less your nervous system, right? And it just starts kind of shutting down muscles in your body until eventually it gets to, you know, it gets to your throat, it gets to your lungs. You know, you lose your voice at some point, then you lose the ability to breathe independently, the ability to eat and that sort of thing. So it's the worst part about it is it's like you never really lose your mental capacity. So I just lost another friend in August to ALS, gentleman named Matt Hogan. And so Kevin and Matt were two of the like smartest, kindest, brightest, hardest charging, and two of the most successful people I ever knew in my life. And I knew that their minds were just as sharp. So it's like you're trapped in a glass cage at some point, you know what I mean? Which is awful, because your minds keeps working, but everything else in your body fails, you know. And it's one of the worst diseases.
And he started a foundation?
Yeah. So he started something called the ALS Nights. Um, and it's a cool story because, again, this is who he is. And he's, you know, very much was an entrepreneur. So he took a business sense, an entrepreneur's sense to doing this. Kevin, you know, at Mass General here, it's one of the greatest hospitals in the world. So his personal doctor was the head of neurology there. And so he had a meeting with, her name's Merit Sokovich, and she's amazing. She's been such a huge part of getting this foundation off the ground as well. But the first meeting he had with her, he learned that she spent like 50% of her time writing grants. So I mean, this might be the smartest person on the planet, Jay, right? Head of neurology at Mass General, the best hospital in the world. And she's spending all this time just trying to write grants so she can get some money to get back in the lab and keep working on ALS. And then he met a few other very influential people in the space that kind of had the same story. And they were like, we're onto this, but we just don't have the funding. And so he asked them, so they were very fractured, right? This fundraising, I mean, the research groups and the lab groups and the doctors, they worked in silos. So he challenged Merritt. He said, listen, can you get all these people in a room next week? You know, can you reserve a room here? And I want to talk to everybody. She goes, it's never going to happen, but sure, I'll send out the invite. Kev, he goes, all right, let's reserve this room over here, you know, on Wednesday. He was a ballsy guy, man. I mean, he's in Mass General. He's like, we're going to reserve that room over there. He's talking to the head of neurology. And they all showed up, and he just started asking them, like, what is the problem? And it was all, what it came down to was money, you know? So he's like, all right, well, if we can get you money, I don't know how much money we can get you. I don't know what fundraising looks like. We're going to figure that out next. If we can get money into your hands, no strings attached, you know, will that help? Is there any other regulations we got to jump through and hoops and all this sort of stuff? Or can you guys just go to work? And they were basically like, no, if we get the money and there's, you know, whatever, no strings attached, we can just get to work on this. So that's when he started the ALS Nights, which became ALS One, which to date's raised about $14 million and literally has just been given right over to these groups. So it's the Healy Center at up in Mass General, There's a CCALS, which is a care group. They happen to be down on Cape Cod. They're right across the street from me. Amazing group as well. So they fund that too. This group gets this chunk. ALS TDI, who's the only nonprofit pharma trying to find a cure for ALS as well. They're out of Cambridge. So he figured out a way to, like, kind of let's get the funds in these smart people's hands. We're going to be the machine. And that was how ALS One was born. So
What qualities of Kevin made him a great CEO?
definitely fearless. I mean, he was so quick. He was so brilliant. He could figure people out in a second. But he was magnetic. Like, as soon as you were around him, you're like, all right, I just want to spend more time with this guy. He was one of those people. And what's crazy, Jay, is he was charismatic in like a Boston guy kind of way, if that makes any sense. Like, I still remember early on when we were starting to take these meetings to get in with the commercial real estate groups. We were going up to like the 48th floor of the Prudential Center building. So we were, high rise, tallest building in Boston, really fancy. We're going into this beautiful office, and he's got a pair of sweatpants because he had gone out to the job site earlier that day and just didn't even. And that's who he was. We walked in, and we walked out. He had 5 new friends for life, because that's who he was. So,
Wow.
but yeah, definitely. I mean, what comes to mind first, what I learned from him was really, if you're to be fearless, in everything that you approach, tactical, smart. We made a lot of mistakes early on where we weren't necessarily tactical and smart, maybe a little too fearless. But yeah, I think that's the number one thing that made him a great CEO.
What was the inspiration behind Talking Lots?
Well, I think, I don't know, man. I'll be honest with you. I don't think we've found our lane with that yet, to be honest with you. It's so hard for me because I love doing this stuff, but Talking Lots it's the Pavement Group podcast. So we got to represent the brand, right? I got to be respectful of the Shield. I don't want to be out there. My sense of humor, is generally a little more over the top and a little more, I don't know. I don't want to say if it's in the gutter, but I'm prone to kind of say anything. So, it's not just a kind of a playground sort of a show. Like, I want to really bring, value to people that are watching it. So we've been
Yeah,
trying
you're
to
a
find
dark humorist. You dressed like Himmler tonight for Culture Matters.
even the glasses. Oh man,
Absolutely.
yeah, I've
You're
taken
a
more heat over this mustache. I'll
satirist,
tell you that.
satirical.
Oh man, satirical.
Yeah,
But
we'll do this again.
I think we do now have it figured out how we're going to do segments with it. And it's a challenge with the whole team being in Pittsburgh. I'm here, Eli's doing a tremendous job of taking the reins some weeks. And, you'll probably see more of that coming. But so I didn't answer your question, why we started it. I really started because I wanted a creative outlet, so we started as the Pavement Group podcast. It was during COVID, and it was kind of Brian and Mike and I, and then Brian and I would tag team. Then we'd have different guests on. It was a lot of people I knew, like from the commercial real estate world in Boston. And, it was good. It was fun. It was just sort of something that you learn something new about people. We try to key in on industry trends and market forecasting and all that sort of stuff. I just don't think we've gotten all that stuff dialed in yet, but we're working on it, and it's fun.
For those unfamiliar, what is the Pavement Group?
The Pavement Group is, well, man, so many things I could say about the Pavement Group, but no, we're a national paving company. We're a technology-driven pavement company that services the entire country. We're a perfect fit for anyone that's got a portfolio, especially that's spread out, into multiple cities, multiple states, and likes to take a data-driven approach to managing their parking lot assets. So, we kind of start there. We try to help everybody or anybody that we meet with understand what they have for their assets. It's so hard for a guy or a gal that sits in Michigan and they have 20 properties in Missouri and 10 in Atlanta and 5 in Texas. Like, that is a really hard job. I think about all these different levels that they need to answer to, whether it's an investment group or just their boss or it's tenants or whatever. So we really try to give them all the information, at least pertaining to their asphalt and concrete, and tell them this is what you really should do this year. And then this is kind of a 5-year look for it. So starting with, well, we start with the data, but starting from the aspect of safety and then curb appeal. And with our technology, we're able to marry what they have for profitability, tenant flip, how long they're going to hold the properties, all that sort of stuff. And it marries well again into our technology, so we can help build them a plan that makes sense. Like I like to say, a lot of people will give you the data. Like there's plenty of programs out there that you can get the data on your parking lot, and someone's going to just come and throw it on your desk, and then you got to figure it out. We really try to add the intelligence behind it. And that's what we've been able to do with our property technologies software. So, I don't always or often talk about parking lots, milling, paving, grading, all that stuff. When, initially when we're talking about the pavement group, because that's really, we get the heart of a technology company, and we help people spend their money so much better. And of course, we act as a contractor to help them get the job done.
In the absence of that clarity of that plan, what are some of the problems that emerge?
So you mean for a customer that might not have that sort of data? Well, they're going to waste a lot of money, first and foremost. They could waste a lot of time. What happens in that world a lot, and that again, that is very common, where you're sitting in 500 miles away, 700 miles away, 1,200 miles away, this tenant's screaming, this owner over here is screaming, this manager is screaming. So you're just throwing money at them to get them to stop calling you, or just to put the fire out. So, excuse me, we've had clients where we've seen a $70,000 patching job get done on a parking lot that was slated to get completely removed the next year, and it was done in like late November. This is a specific instance. I remember it was in Michigan, and that job was going to get completely ripped out in, I think, May or June, because they were putting an addition on the building, and they had $1.3 million already allocated for. They spent $70,000 that they had no idea they were just going to spend again. So if you have that kind of information, and our job is to work with facilities managers and make them look good to their whoever they're reporting to, whoever their boss is, whether it's their direct boss or it's culturally a boss, it's tenants, it's whatever. Like, at everything we do, everything we leverage technology is to make them look tremendous, and then they're going to want to use us again, right? So that's that. And we even, once we get into a project as well, we leverage technology for communication, for output, for input. And that, again, our whole goal there is to make their job easier. Eli says it really well too. And also make sure they get home a little bit earlier if they're working with us. They get a little bit less worries. They're not taking 20 calls on a Saturday while they're at their kid's soccer game, because we got it. It's like having that kind of an approach. So
Where do the contractors fall in?
the contractors fall in. Brilliant man referred to them as cultural employees, and that, I think, created, and that was a few years ago, as we were building this, and that created a paradigm shift. Jay, you were the brilliant man, by the way, who said it, but it's so true, man. It created a real paradigm shift for many of us to understand that, these folks are out there doing the hard work. Like I think sales is a hard job. I would never, ever, ever say it's a harder job than working out on a paving crew or a seal coat crew, or anything, not even remotely. Like, that is hard work, and having the respect for what they do, and therefore the relationship, and our role in it. We get a great opportunity to, get with a lot of the contractors we use. We don't tend to use big companies. We use smaller companies. A perfect contractor for us, perfect partner, is someone that's really good in the field, but maybe doesn't have time to do sales, marketing. He's up, doing bills at the kitchen table at midnight, that sort of thing. So he's running his business. If we can take that piece off of him, and then also help with the scheduling and the administrative part of it, and then they can plug into some of our technology to streamline things for them, that's a perfect contractor for us. And that is so rewarding. We've seen a lot of our partners grow their businesses over the last few years, through work that we've been giving them and things that we've partnered on. So it's that's the best part of it, is seeing these guys and gals get more, sorry, I'm such a construction show, so I always say guys.
That's okay. We represent Western patriarchy here. That's
Even with the mustache.
Yeah, I hope that joke lands. Uh, hold on, let me get this straight. So the contractors that really good at their craft may lack the infrastructure for sales and marketing. I'm thinking in the absence of that partnership, how are they even going to be in business? Theoretically, meaning
Sure.
that's like getting the benefits of work of larger work that could take them to the next level without having to um, give up their ownership or give up their
Well,
just the way
so
you phrased it. It sounded like a huge opportunity. If I lack the infrastructure, sales, infrastructure, marketing, I'm really passionate about my craft or an expert,
yeah.
right? Working in my business, making quality work. How am I going to get to that next level? Maybe it's through this relationship.
No, for sure. And we're not doing it for any other reason than for to grow our company and to help them grow their company as well. So something that you kind of touched on there's a lot of things going on in our industry with consolidation and sort of, hey, let's get you to here, then we'll scoop you up or whatever it is. We're not really motivated by that. We want to get a great product for our customers at the end of the day. And we want to have a vendor that's going to stay with us because we want that consistency. There's a cost of acquisition on both sides for us. There's a cost of acquisition for a customer, but there's also a cost of acquisition for our partners, for our contractors. We spend a lot of money, maybe just as much money marketing to our contractors, to make sure that we're getting the right folks. And you want to make sure they're a cultural fit. But something that we've learned too that I think we went a little too fast with, Jay, that we're putting in place this year is having a deeper conversation with the contractors. Say, do you want to grow actually? Or are you like, do you want to be this guy in this market here that you want to stay at, I don't know, pick a number, $5 million. And that's a great world for you. Because in this world, man, it's hard to go from, say, I mean, certain jumps in the inflation, the metrics have changed a little bit, but go like 3, 4, then 7, and then 12, because it's equipment and it's a labor intensive
Yes,
business. So it's an investment, right? So we got to make sure we're aligned with what they really want to do, because we've overwhelmed some contractors as well with some really quick growth. And, especially like, younger up and coming guys that don't want to say no, and they take it on. And we're not interested in creating problems for people. So that's something that we've learned here in the next couple of years. We're a young company. We're learning along the way. And to make sure that that we understand what their goals are, you know what I mean? And that we're not just growing them because everybody wants to grow. Not everybody wants to grow, you know?
that's powerful. Is that because the power that the group has to be able to provide them work can go beyond their vision?
I think for sure, yeah. Well, that's why Top Contractor School is great too, and then our One Team initiative, and it brings folks in, and we can help. There's plenty of people that are way ahead of us in the industry too. I'm not acting like we get all the answers, but we've put a pretty experienced crew together. Some people, our leadership team that have been in this industry for a long time, have seen a lot of things that can help. So they, plugging in, it's not like they need us for everything. I'm not trying to say it that way, but there's certain things that we can kind of help with there. Yeah, for sure.
Where do you see things in a few years?
For our company, or are you talking for the
Yeah,
country? Is this an election question, Jay?
yeah.
Yeah, I see. No,
Ah,
I think we're going to get a little more diversified. Just because there's a lot of opportunity out there right now. Not way out, but we're a paving company. We're a tech company. We're a paving company at heart. That's what we're going to continue to grow through. But there's things like, EV right now is something that we're investing in. We brought in a gentleman named Chris Lambert, who's been in the EV space for a long time and brings a lot to that. He's going to help us really grow that out. I think there's going to be a lot of potential things that come, just kind of come out of that. Um, so I don't know where I see us. I mean, I think we're going to continue to grow exponentially, but maybe triple the headcount in the company, something like that. I don't know. You're staring at me, so I feel like I need to give you an answer, and I'm just panicking because I don't know. We don't write anything down, Jay. We've never written anything down here. I don't even know where we are right now. No, no, man. I'm enjoying the journey, and it's like, You know, when I first met Brian, you know, and they were, you know, him and Mike and the other guys were starting this thing out. It felt like, hey, let's go build something cool, then spin it off in 5 or 7 years or something like that. And it's just this thing has such a heartbeat, man. And just where it can go and where it can be in 100 years from now is really pretty exciting to think about. You know, not just like legacy, but just all the things that it can do and all the people that are
Yeah,
involved
you
that are
know,
so
I just
committed.
when you said spin off in a couple years, I thought of a late abortion. I mean, that's what that is. This is just my, cultural expertise.
Yes, I I believe a couple of years, that's just murder. Is what that is, man.
Yeah, no.
But
I'm
but
glad
here it
we
is.
recorded.
Here it
Yeah, I'm
is.
glad we recorded this. We get a great culture curated, and then the spinoff is this is my words, a
Right. No,
late
man.
stage abortion.
No, so it's because you know, there's a lot of different things happening in this industry right now too. And
Like
you know,
what?
we kind of what's that?
What's happening?
Well, like there's a lot of roll up, there's a lot of acquisition. Um, and there's you know, a bit of a race, I think, there. And we don't have to pay attention to it, which is kind of nice. You know what I mean? We're not we just kind of got the blinders on and we got our, I don't want to call it a bubble, but we got sort of this world that we've built that's really unique and different. And I don't know. I think that's a gift to be there right now, you know. And Brian and Mike have been really smart financially with the company and, you know, doing things when we should be doing things and, you know, excuse me, predicting 2, 3 years out where we're going to need to be for cash flow and revenue and all that sort of stuff. So it's good. Not to say again, there's plenty of pressure with a company like this, you know, with building something like this. I'm not saying it's super easy or anything like that, but it feels good, you know, and that's the great part about it.
Why is there so much money going towards the space? Wall
I
Street.
If I had a guess, well, I mean, there's all that money there that's going to go somewhere, right? So they're picking places to invest. Landscape went, HVAC went, right? So they're trying. This is the second go around, really, in paving. I don't think it's so easy. For two reasons, I don't, and you'll appreciate the second reason. But A, because of how, like, when landscaping and in you know, plumbing or HVAC, you've got service. You can buy a company that's got 10 vehicles that you know are going to be on the road every single day. That the phone rings, they've got service, they get tickets, they got that type of revenue that, you know, you got almost a recurring revenue model with those. Paving, you start fresh every year, right? There's some maintenance to it, there's some contracts to it. We have some MSAs. Most local paving companies just kind of don't have that. They've always just done this one or done that one. And so there's not a lot of contracts. And then you've got to consider all the equipment that you're going to buy, understanding the life cycle of all that stuff, especially if you grow. Like, it's really hard to predict, I think, from a financial standpoint versus, you know, mowers and blowers and very light equipment like line striping. Different animal, right? That's light. You do get a lot of that's light equipment wise, it's light labor wise, you know, one truck, two trucks, and you do get a lot of recurring revenue there that you can understand. But overall, paving. But I also think it's a culture thing. So paving's been a sort of a cottage industry for many, many years. Aside from the big asphalt plants, there weren't that many big regional companies for years and years. They were all sort of more mom and pop. It was generational. You know, and you're getting now to that, maybe it's a second or third generation that's looking for an exit strategy. PE money's coming in saying, hey, let's go. But you have such a cultural divide because these companies have not been built in a similar way. They don't believe all the same things. So you have all that fixing to do. And I think that's hard. I think that's hard, man, because you know, we dabbled a little bit, as I said, and so we looked, you know, when with T&K, we were looking at doing something on a national level. We met with a lot of companies, and even back then, it was 2013, whatever, was sort of my takeaway from it was how different the culture was. And it was you know, it was usually the patriarch, the father, the grandfather that started the company, and we do things my way. And, you know, so I think it's going to be hard to blend all that.
What's something that Mike Hookie's taught you?
That Mike's taught me. How to, well, Mike's a fearless leader as well. I don't think he realizes that. but he has leaned into growth like nobody I've ever seen in just a year. In just a year, I think, and I mean, he's been leading longer than that, but I should say this season, we had two of the previous owners had retired, and Mike really stepped up into a high visibility leadership role, and he killed it. And so I think, you can learn to believe in yourself, because I don't think he necessarily believed in himself. When he started this, I don't think he knew exactly who he was or what he was capable of, and you could see throughout the year this year. So I guess I learned that from him, from watching him. And then what I learned directly from is technical stuff. Like, he's so off the charts with, field paving stuff, but also technology. I mean, he built our software program, the version 1.0 himself, watching YouTube videos. So anytime I have a problem, like if I can't turn my phone on, which happens, I just call him on somebody else's phone, of course.
What's something that Brian Hess has taught you?
Brian's taught me, vision casting. He's got an ability to get people really excited. And I like that, and I've kind of studied that to some degree. I've never seen anybody do it so naturally. To convey, like, he is the ultimate elevator guy. Like, you're going up 3 floors, he can have you bought in on the vision in that 3 floor. You know what I mean? Like, that quickly. He's just so eloquent, and his thoughts are so organized when he's on a mission with things. So how to cast vision and how to really drive it home, I guess.
What's Eli taught you?
Eli has, oh God, he's taught me so much, truly, man. He's taught me just how to be humble. He's taught me how to be a great student too. Like that, what I realized with him is, I mean, he's young, so obviously he's never done learning, but for me as well, how fun it is to learn new stuff too. Cause you gotta remember, like, I, I was successful in sales, and I knew one way of sort of doing it. Right. And, but I also, back when I was hiring, when I was in my 30s, and I'd hire guys that were my age, maybe a little bit beyond, they weren't coachable, right? Because they had some success in sales, and they were like, "Don't worry about it, kid. I got it." I'm like, "I know you do. That's why you're here, but this works a little better here," that sort of thing. And so I knew, like, I'm coming into a very forward thinking company here, in an industry I know, but technologies I don't know, a way of marketing that I don't know, bridging sales and marketing in a way that I've never done before. So I knew I had to learn. And Eli has that, like, soul. He's like just a constant learner. He's a sponge. He listens so well. And I get to spend so much time with him that really rubs off on me and keeps me feeling like a youthful learner. You know what I mean? I want to do so much of that stuff together with him. So much of that learning together with him.
What's the biggest lesson you got in 23?
Biggest lesson I got in 23. Boy, that's a good question. What was the biggest lesson this year? Probably to make sure you check your Delta Sky miles in, like, October, so you don't miss platinum by one flight. That might have, no. The biggest lesson, no, I really started to understand the vision of the content, how much content we have going out there. And this is part of, again, the learning piece of it. But I called Brian maybe 2 nights ago, and he had put a post on Facebook just about, what we have out right there right now on the platform. And not to say, I was never like, what are we doing this for? It wasn't that sort of thing, but it didn't all click. And I read that post, and I'm thinking about all the things we heard. Like, we were at the Ignite conference last week with a lot of paving contractors, and the feedback we got and things folks were saying to us. And it all just sort of clicked right there that this is the way business needs to be done today, creating, and this is that bridge between, like, why sales is different now. It's that bridge between branding and marketing and then sales. It makes it so much easier if you do it right up front, because you're walking in and the trust is built, right? You're walking into your initial meeting, they already know you. They already know the company. They know Paige and Mark from the Perks, like how powerful that stuff really is. So I think that's my biggest takeaway, is I finally had the light switch moment. Because, like, when we started the podcast, as I said, I didn't not see value in it. But I was more like, this is gonna be fun. You get a chance to tell my stupid jokes and talk on the microphone once a week.
Wow. But you've seen the perspective shift.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. It really is, just kind of all that's gone into this year. Because when you're in construction to begin with, this is what I'm accustomed to. It's like March 1st, maybe March 15th, your head goes down and you just go like crazy. And then around Thanksgiving,
Hmm.
you pick your head up and then you lick your wounds for 3 months. That's kind of always been the cycle. So it wasn't much different
Hmm.
here, even though we're a different kind of company. This year it was just so flipping much. I was on 75 planes and 100 nights at a hotel, in Pittsburgh all the time, meetings and la da 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 da. So this is the time of year I love to sit back and kind of reflect, looking forward and looking back a little bit. And that was my biggest thing that hit me like, whoa, that was that was mammoth. And your soon to be bride Jenna had so much to do with that as well. She and Miranda lead a very talented group of people over there that are doing an incredible job. And I don't think many people in our industry probably understand what that is doing for us and what that will do for us in 2, 3, 5 years, maybe 5.5 years, Jay. I don't really know, you know.
Um, Munger says it well. Something about why would the 99-cent guru be telling you his secret sauce as opposed to using it?
Why? What is it?
No, like I'm using like a very poor articulation of something Munger said.
Oh, okay.
Like what would be the value of the investor sharing how they got 20% per annum returns as opposed to just investing,
But what,
right?
yeah.
Meaning,
No, I get what you're saying, but I don't, are you asking me?
no,
Uh,
where I'm going with that is I'd rather not speak to the secret sauce because I don't have a $99 course to sell
I get,
because it's much more um right? Like you have pride in the work. The people that have something to sell you, they may not be doing it
right. No,
because
that's true.
so anyway, that just came to mind. It's like it's exciting. It's all very exciting. Oh, something that I would like your thoughts on just is interesting. Marketing inherently will take will react to sales in absence of a vision and a plan, and that undermines both sales and marketing. Marketing's got to create opportunity for sales to convert on, and that's both a science and an art.
Wow. Yeah, that is deep. Was that the quote? Or did you just make that up?
I it's less, yeah, I'm just the latter.
That's
It's
the
like
mid-episode
this
quote.
is something, yeah, it's something
No.
that that I believe, which is that marketing's role is to make sales shine, not to supplement where sales is weak. And over time, congeals into a brand, right? The belief uh, in X to solve for Y, the belief of a consumer base in
Yeah.
X to solve for Y, which is their problem or problems. And
Well,
so it's just inspiring to hear you say all this
on that
because
same, oh, I'm sorry.
wow, no,
I
go
was
ahead.
just gonna say in that same vein, um, something else that I'm looking at differently after this year, or maybe it was an aha moment as well, is how much more bandwidth our sales people, not just ours, but sales people in the world now, really should have because of that sort of marrying and convergence. Like I feel like, in a sale, it was 10% branding, 20% marketing, and then 70% sales before, where I feel like that's not that it's only 30% sales, but maybe it's 50-50 split there.
Man, it's a good point.
Well, because if you create your social media well, you got a presence out there, people know you when you walk in. Like a lot of that early stuff it's taken care of for you, right? That bonding and rapport, and a lot of that, like you're looking at it differently.
And to add to that, the old, the tried, the true can invert at a high degree. It's almost as if, what's that old adage? Don't unsell them, right? Don't, we,
Like selling
half the
past the
sale
close.
is not like half the sale is not selling them out of making the decision they've already made for themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
As we become more integrated with technology, we as the consumer, we're all consumers. We come to conclusions beforehand. We've always done that, but as information becomes more available to us, we have more and more. We have stronger and stronger bias for what we want and how we want it. More consumer control.
Right.
So if that's the case, the consumer behavior changes because the consumer psychology changes, and therefore the sales behavior and sales psychology will have to adapt with that cultural evolution. Or it's like a
Do you think the consultative part of it is diminished at this point because everybody can do their own research ahead of time? Like people come in with a preconceived notion, whether it's a product or a project, they've already got like sort of their hard opinions on it and they have learned about it.
the context of the questions. I would argue the context of the questions is a call to openness as opposed to closeness masking as openness.
Okay.
So if I ask you a question that's a close-ended question, that's a leading question. The
Yep.
more aware, more sophisticated buyer
So you got
immediately
to find out
sees
what their
through that.
opinion actually is, because they're not going to, that might be what they hold on to tightly. Like if they've done all the research and you walk in, you walk into a meeting and they're not going to just be like, hey, here's what I found out. Here's what I think. What do you have? You still got to do that fact finding. It's just less presenting the solution and it's more finding out exactly what it is that they now think, not even what they need, but necessarily what they think, and then finding that middle ground so the solution's right.
Yeah, a call to emotional. I don't like the word emotional intelligence for a lot of reasons.
Oh,
That's another podcast.
cover that book. I think it's right behind me.
It's another podcast.
Yeah,
But
it's
let's
another
say
book I've
it's a
never read behind me.
call.
So.
It's a call to you know like if I ask you a question because I want to know what you think is different than if I ask you a question because I've presupposed where the conversation could go. The latter is the old school is more of the cultural milieu of sales of the past. I'm asking because I have more information than you as a salesperson. I'm in more control. I have more information,
Right.
and I'm going to be inclined to guide you
Yeah,
to what
sure.
you need. As information becomes more available to the consumer, we might have the same amount of information, or actually, the consumer might have more information.
Very possible.
So it's a call to self-awareness of salespeople, which I would argue theoretically is oxymoronic as it relates to sales, because it's another podcast. Yeah, self-awareness and sales are oxymoronic because you jump right into leadership, not brokering commodities.
Sure.
And so it could be the obliviation of the end of salespeople.
Oh shit. How do we get on robots?
Yeah. No, I mean,
I know what you're saying.
I'm being a bit
I just
theoretical here.
well, I
Let's
think
say,
the salespeople that are adapting to this world, are embracing having to have some sort of a persona and you're online, like all that sort of stuff up front. But once you have the meeting and you're actually trying to sell the product with a customer, that exact what you're talking about is that appreciating that they might know more than you. They might already have this figured out and have a better solution than you. So you can't just go in features and benefits. And this is why we're the best. And
that's nothing new. That's nothing new.
It's not anything new, but I think before you were trying to get like sort of the psychographic of the customer. Well, how are they going to buy? What do they believe? And all that sort of stuff. Now you're just trying to figure out like, what do they believe about this particular thing? Like, what have they read? What have they seen? What have my competition told them and brainwashed them with? You're trying to kind of pull that out and kind of, so it's a little more of a narrow approach. But I think what you said before, I didn't understand at all. I'm sorry. You're way way smarter than I am. No, I'm
Well,
kidding.
I wouldn't, you know, I like talking about these things with you though. We tend to have fun with it.
Yeah,
Um,
no, for sure, man. And I totally understand what you're saying. I'm just kidding.
we'll have to have
I love
a,
that you have a passion for sales too, man. It's cool.
well, I have a passion for business, and part of business is the brokering of ideas,
True.
right? Like what is a sales person? They broker the idea of the business, like the problem it's solving in relation to the consumer who's looking for the solution and has so many choices for that solution. So anyway, for another day, but yeah, I
Yeah.
like talking about these types of things with you because you're a philosophical guy, and I do like to talk about sales, and I do, and well, and I would say, culture is about people, and how sales people sell will reveal the culture.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah,
It'll
that's so
reveal the
true.
values, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Because based on the honesty, the honesty, and the process, it will reveal the values at the gate, right? It's like setting the expectation in. I'll give you an example. Let's say that the marketing says one story, and then the salesperson lives that story or doesn't.
Sure.
The salesperson's interaction is verifying the perception
Yeah.
and creating an expectation for the future.
No, absolutely.
For then the service to further live that expectation by delivering on the promises of sales. So anyway, no, generally I like the business and thinking about business, and sales is a although it sounded like I was destroying sales and the
No,
future of sales. I'm very bullish on sales.
I love it.
Let's talk a lot sometime. So, Todd, in closing for this, um, is anyone listening yet left? That's my next. Is anyone still listening? What do you think?
I
What's the over under on that?
I don't care. I don't care. This was a lot of fun. I mean, I hope they are, but I don't really care. Oh man.
Okay, last question.
Sure.
It's like, should this be like a deep question? No, I mean, if you were to give a theme for this conversation today, what would it be? And the second question part is like, what's your call to action for our listeners?
Um, oh gosh, great questions. Great questions. A theme. Well, we definitely got deep into sales. So I think that was a bit of a theme. So if you I like trying to think if you were to give this episode a title, um, there's a kind of a little bit of the journey of the pavement group and why sales has changed to some degree or evolved. I'll call it evolved. And a call to action. I think anybody that listens to this, have you ever told people to read books? Have you touched on that one already? Oh, maybe you have. All right. So you already got that covered.
Yeah,
I
you're.
would say, no,
Were you
I would say
Canadian?
for like really, don't be afraid to turn the camera on yourself. And it's so funny, man. Like that's like last year's buzz, right? Like, now everybody's already turned the camera, so nobody's afraid. But for real, I know a lot of people that still are salespeople. Even like at T&K, my great friend Greg, who's the marketing manager there, they put out nice looking content. They've been putting out videos of a lot of equipment and stuff. I was texting them for like 6 months. I'm like, Greg, turn the camera on yourself, man. Or the crews, like you got some characters out there. Some of those guys, really great, interesting guys, great stories. And he's such a great guy. Like everybody loves him. Like, they started to do that a little bit more, not because I told them to, but they hired a marketing person. They're doing it more. And it seems like it's just a whole different company, just seeing the inside of it more so. And you have no idea how big of an impact that makes when people get a little opportunity to see, and they want to know the real you. They don't want just a polished speaker that's saying, they don't want that. They want like reality. And that's again why that's worked for us to a large degree. We're not trying to start a TV channel. We're not looking to get 1 million views on every video. We're trying to get it out there who we are at the Pavement Group. And we're really, our sales team's really starting to take to that more as well. Eli's done, I think, a nice job with his personal brand. And the rest of the crew's really started to get there. So That would be the thing to take action on, in my mind, going into 2024. When's this going to be on?
Probably 2025.
2025. You got a big backlog. All right. And get those flying cars, kids. Get yourself a flying car by the
Well, I
time this
recorded
comes out.
191. I just checked the queue, 191. But we're going to be releasing one a day. That's where our goal is.
Oh,
I
okay.
want to break the, system. So I've recorded the hundreds of these. But so I think very safely, probably Q4 2024.
Fair enough. Yeah. So, I mean, the Patriots looking good finally. Got brought in a quarterback from the draft, and let's predict the future here for a minute, Jay. Pavement Group on Mars. What else happened this year?
I think a 9-figure in sales.
Yeah.
And I think, but
We got a shot.
beyond that, an environment that people are grateful and, have meaning in a time of uncertainty and angst, because, in 2025, 2026, is it really going to be the greatest time? I mean, people have been saying, where I'm going with that is we've had some really
No, I know. I
amazing
have my
excess.
concerns that it's not going to be. I agree with what you're saying. There's
I think
potential
it
that
will be
those could be
for,
hard years.
sorry, what?
No, I think there's a real potential that those could be hard years. And you're right, creating a place where people can feel safe and protected. That would be pretty amazing.
That likely is not going to sell them down the river
Right.
for a pittance
No.
for a handful of people at the top of the hierarchy.
Right.
So yeah, I why not, right? And I don't know if this will actually go out in a year, because I might put you to the higher up, but maybe now that we've said this. Sorry, Todd. What's your final word? What do you want the audience to?
We'll see. I hope everybody has a tremendously prosperous upcoming, insert whatever year it is here. No, for real, man. I love this time of year. Again, we're recording this in the middle of December. So, I love this time of year. As I said, I love to reflect. I love to look forward. I love the strategy part of this year. We're all, kind of putting in its fresh start, and you're ripping the calendar off and you're putting new plans all over the place. And I love that. I hope everybody's got the energy, gets a little bit of recharge and has the energy and just charges into this new year.